Good day. This is Coach Jeff of Aldham Athletic Development, and today we're going to train internal rotation of the glenohumeral joint or shoulder joint as we know it. So before we begin, we're maybe going to need a yoga block. I like the yoga block because how firm it is and how it can be used as a support to place above and on top of your shoulder and placing your head on top as a rest, obviously. But where it's going to be useful here is as I internally rotate my glenohumeral joint, often at times the compensation here is people will shrug their shoulder. So as you can see, I'm shrugging my shoulder to create more internal rotation of my shoulder, and that's pushing the yoga block up. So you could simply pack that block down on top of your shoulder, apply a little pressure with your head in that you can keep that yoga block there nice and firm. So it's secure as I internally rotate my shoulder. And then what we'll do is we'll go back and forth through capsular cars. Capsule cars are simply internal and external rotation, in this case for our shoulder. And then the other compensation I want to watch for as I internally rotate coming down, I don't want my arm to slide down. Okay, so you could use your other hand as a little bit of a passive block or support to prevent that from happening, okay? So as you internally rotate down, I often reference your arm wrestling a ghost maybe, right? An imaginary person you're arm wrestling. So internally rotating down, you should feel it deep inside the shoulder socket, and then externally rotating back. Most often, most people can externally rotate and get their arm all the way back. So for this purpose of doing capsular cars here to warm up the shoulder joint, holding and squeezing in that end range, again, avoiding compensations by shrugging the shoulder or sliding that arm down. Another compensation we want to be mindful of is not over flexing with the wrist, okay? So we want this all to come through this upper arm of, again, your humerus inside your glenoid or your shoulder socket or joint. So again, internal, external rotation. How many reps do we do here of our capsular cars? Enough that you feel it's warmed up, okay? From there, I'm now going to take my other arm, place it over top as a passive support. Again, trying to gain more internal rotation as I bring it down, feeling a deeper stretch inside my shoulder. And for here, we're going to hold this for a 2-minute passive stretch. The purpose of the 2-minute stretch is to bypass the stretch reflex, which is just another way of saying we're going to convince the nervous system a little bit more so that when we do go into our isometrics a la PAILs and rails, we'll get a better effect out of it, being that we did indeed hold for a 2-minute passive stretch. We encourage that you get into your end range, again, avoiding those compensations we mentioned prior via our capsular cars. Deep breathing is re-encouraged here in that we want to take a deep breath in, exhale, maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Again, this will be stressful in the shoulder joint. So the purpose of the deep breathing is to just calm the nervous system down a little bit more. So that it allows us to get maybe into deeper ranges of motion, okay? So we'll hold for about another minute here, 2-minute stretch, and then we're going to execute what are called PAILs and rails. So our progressive angle isometric loading, I'm just going to come out of this stretch and demonstrate this. If you could just stay in the stretch, that'd be great. Our progressive angle isometric loading will be us actually pushing back into the passive supporting arm. It is an isometric or a static contraction, so we don't want to actually or physically move. But I'm going to hold real tight here with my left arm or my passive supporting arm in this case as I drive through. Even though I'm in internal rotation setup, it's as if I'm externally rotating back coming this way, okay? And then we're going to hold that nice and tight. That will be for our progressive angle isometric, okay? And I will guide us through intensity and duration throughout that. And then immediately after that PAILs contraction, we're going to go into our regressive angle isometric. So when we do our rails, we're going to try to rotate down more into internally rotate. Okay, so it's as if you're trying to pull that arm off of the other arm, right? Again, referencing your arm wrestling that ghost, okay? And that will obviously create more of an internal rotation type of feeling in that shoulder. Again, this is the deepest tissue inside your shoulder joint, okay? So we'll begin with a big inhale, forceful exhale, and that just gets the body nice and contracted. Maybe your core is a little bit more contracted. And then we're going to begin doing our PAILs contraction by pushing up as if you're rotating back into that arm. Hold nice and secure. Let's start that at about a 10 to 20% effort. Increasing intensity if you could, pain-free, 30 to 40% effort. Gradually ramp up. Maybe we can get to 50%. Now we're beginning to create sub-maximal effort throughout this isometric. 60% if you could. You're starting to shake a little bit, and that's not uncommon. Try at 70%. And at 70%, we're going to hold for a 10 count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Immediately go into your rails. So now you're rotating down the other direction, away from your arm. And don't expect it to actually come off of the arm. If it does, it's not the end of the world, but I'll explain to you what the benefit of maybe getting into your end range more. Okay, so if it is coming off that other arm, you might not be into your end range. This is again at a 70% intensity, so we're going to go right where we left off from our PAILs into our rails. 70%, 3, 2, 1, and relax, but stay in position. Okay, you might have a little bit more range of motion than you started. As you can see, I do. That often happens once we convince that nervous system through maybe a practice rep or two or a sub-maximal intensity. But now we're going to increase the intensity to what we call our greatest, safest effort. Okay, obviously greatest, safest effort could be max effort. But if you feel like it's painful in the shoulder, pain is increased maybe past a 3 out of 10, that's not something we want to push through, right? So we could always progressively load this over time to get to our greatest, safest effort as the goal. Okay, let's do rep 2. Deep breath in, forceful exhale. Let's begin to PAILs again, pushing back up into the passive support of the other arm. Let's begin 50 to 60% this time. 70. See if you can push a little harder this time, maybe at 80%. That's a good place to start if you're new to this, or if you've been training this over time, 90%. And then your greatest, safest effort, we're going to hold that for a 10 count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now rails going the other direction, rotating down towards your feet. Careful you're not compensating through the wrist, sliding the arm down, nor hiking the shoulder. Greatest, safest effort. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and ease out, but stay in position, okay? So clearly we could train another rep here if we indeed need to get to a higher intensity. It is prescribed to eventually get this up to your greatest, safest effort, whether that's in the first session because you're experienced with this, or you can, if you were at 80% or so today, maybe next time if you felt okay the next day or two, ramp that up to a little higher effort, progressively loading. Okay, so we'll slowly come out of position now. And I just want to come a little bit out of position, okay, because what we're going to do next here are what we call passive range holds. The purpose of passive range holds is that we're going to now regain better control in this end range now that we've created, okay? So how passive range holds are going to work is I'm going to use my passive support to bring me down into internal rotation. Then, a la your rails contraction, where you're rotating down, I'm going to attempt to do that, and then I'm going to remove the passive support. So I'm rotating down at a good sub-maximal intensity, maybe 70 to 80%, remove the passive support, hold that for a few seconds, and then I'm going to put the passive support back down, and then I'm going to relax the shoulder, okay? So again, passive range holds are when we're attempting to hold that end range. So let's try that one more time. Deep breath in, forceful exhale. That just gets the body nice and irradiated. Now I'm going to rotate away from my arm, even though it's not coming off my arm, but now I'm going to peel my passive supporting arm off, holding, trying to maintain that position, and then gently place that arm back down. Once it's there, I can relax, see if I can push in a little bit more range of motion. Deep breath in, exhale, contract the body, contract the shoulder, trying to internally rotate, remove the passive support. Hold for a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 count. Gently place the arm back down and relax, come out of that. There, we did 3 reps there. You could increase the repetitions, but you don't need to do many repetitions. I might prescribe often like 3 to 5 or 6 reps total, because we are holding for a good amount of time under tension throughout each rep. Okay, lastly, we want a little bit more of a muscular input, whereas this is more specific to the joint and connective tissue thus far. I've bumped out of a little bit more of my end range here, and then from here, again, deep breath, forceful exhale, contract the body. Now I'm actually lifting off, internally rotating off of my other arm that has been, up until this point, passively supporting me, right? So I'm going to internally rotate, lift off, hold, squeeze, always slowly bringing it back. And we can repeat this for repetitions. And if you're new to this, I would suggest how many repetitions to do. I don't quite know. What you should do is as many good reps as you can until you start to feel some fatigue. Maybe push through a little bit more for another couple or a few more reps once you have reached fatigue. And then the goal would be certainly to do this to or near failure, right? So near failure would mean I'm trying to internally rotate off and I physically can't even lift it off anymore, okay? That would be a goal that I would recommend maybe after a couple or a few sessions of this. Actually building muscle by training that muscular tissue at this end range to failure. So again, how do you know you're at failure? You're actually trying to rotate off and it's not even coming off anymore. Then you can bet that you have totally fatigued that tissue, and that would send the signal to your brain to actually lay down more end range internal rotation tissue, okay? Reverse engineering, right from where we were from the beginning, where we did capsular cars, where we're just going to simply internally and externally rotate back and forth. And this would just help you save all the work. Capsular cars or global shoulder cars we could do after we've executed our PAILs and rails. Global cars would be more specific to moving the shoulder throughout its entire range of motion, as all of the shoulder function is executed through shoulder cars, where your capsular cars are, again, just specifically training the internal and, or in this case, external rotation shoulder tissue training, okay? So I hope that helps. That is internal rotation, PAILs and rails. We also got into some passive range holds and liftoffs at the end. Those are great supplementary inputs or activities to do to help you save the work throughout your internal rotation training.